On this episode, it's Tad.
That is Tad.
Love him.
With Beach House.
Yeah.
Tad and Beach House.
Hello and welcome to the Subpop Podcast, Season 2, Episode 4.
Episode 4.
I am Arwen, and I am here with Alyssa, and we are the hosts of the Subpop Podcast, which is what you're listening to, and we're in the murder closet. You know how this goes.
It's true. Hey, you know what I think we should do?
What?
Before we even get started? You want to take a trip in a Subpop grunge time
Oh
machine?
my god, so much, yes.
I remember, I think the Afghan Wigs were out on tour, and they were coming back through Portland. We had a tour coming up, and I don't think that Sub Pop was able to give us any kind of like support financially to help at that time. So I think we actually went down and met those guys in Portland and told them that we were picking up the van to tour. But that was bullshit because that didn't happen. So we did pretty much steal the van. And, you know, there was a Sub Pop van at that time that bands would go out and, you know, tour as long as they took care of it and, you know, did oil changes and maintenance. And we got a call and they says, what the hell is going on? Where are you at? You know, like, well, we're out on the road, you know, we're touring.
You stole the van.
Yeah, we stole the van, essentially. But we told the Afghan Wigs that we were there to pick it up for Sub Pop.
Didn't you also get interviewed by the cast of The Real World at some point as if you were in the Afghan Wigs?
Yeah, that was true. Yeah, that was at with Greg Doyle.
What happened? Do you remember?
Some guy thought I was in the Afghan Wigs because he was really there to talk to Greg. And Greg and I were hanging out because we're old school label mates, and I love Greg. The first time we went,
van from him before.
Yeah, and he was cool with it. It wasn't like, you know, whatever. But he took care of us whenever we went to Cincinnati, which is where they were from. He pretty much showed us all around, and you know, we had a day off, and he took us all the cool places, you know, and just kept us entertained. And we stayed at his house.
And so you end up sitting next to him while he's getting interviewed.
Yeah, we were just hanging out. It was like Sub Pop, I don't know, 20 maybe? I don't know. And the guy thought I was in the Afghan Wigs, and so I just started answering questions as if I was. And we were laughing about it. And then at the end, Greg put the guy on the spot and told him that what was going on, and very uncomfortable for him, the dude that was doing the interviews. But I mean, I don't think we were on his radar anyway, so the Real World Tad wasn't on the Real World radar, you know.
To clarify, the grunge time machine that we're talking to Tad and Beach House on this episode, and there was a bit of the interview that felt like a bit of nostalgia, and it's kind of funny that we haven't talked more about grunge on the podcast because of what people think of when they think of Sub Pop, as we learned in the airport episode.
And also because when we said, who do you want to hear us talk to? It was Tad.
Yeah, like across
grunge.
The board, people were like, talk about grunge, talk to Tad. So this episode, that is one of the things that we do. Beach House was also a very requested interview, and we get to do both on this episode, which is cool.
It is cool.
And that clip from The Real World, I found that.
Oh, that Tad mentions in there?
Yes.
That is a good find.
It's from the season of The Real World that was filmed here in Seattle long enough ago that I was still like, MTV had my rapt attention.
Yeah, like
and it was before I moved to Seattle, and I thought it was so dreary and dreamy. But the clip doesn't play out exactly as it does in Tad's memory. Like, they actually clarify it a number of times that Tad is not in the Afghan Wigs, that Tad is from Tad. I think they each clarify it a few times. But what I don't understand from that Sub Pop grunge time machine clip, Alyssa, that I have to ask you about is the idea of there being a Sub Pop van.
Oh my God, I know. And I actually need further clarification on that as well.
Do you know anything about this history?
I mean, I've heard about it, But I need more information, especially hearing from Tad that it was shared enough that you could just be like, well, there it is. I'm taking it.
I mean, I didn't get the feeling that that was allowed.
I like that he said Greg didn't really care. Like, oh, okay. Well, we don't have anything to load out into. That's fine.
Right?
Yeah, funny that didn't last. Can you imagine still trying to maintain that? Signing out a van or something?
I mean, my guess is something went terribly wrong. Oh, no, I hope nothing went terribly wrong.
That is terrible to say. We did have a staff sub-pop van, and plenty went wrong with that. In fact, we could fill a whole episode about what went wrong with that.
So there is no longer a Sub Pop van, and yet the real world is back in Seattle.
What's old is new again?
What's old is new again, and in that same vein, Sub Pop is reissuing a bunch of
That's
Tad
true.
albums. You can find more of that in Stuart's lovely show notes, along with that clip from the real world, and I'm sure a bunch of other stuff this episode.
Yeah, November 4th for those Tad reissues.
There's so much more to say about Tad, and we are actually going to, later in the episode, play a much longer interview with him. It's not just the grunge time machine. There's more than just nostalgia in this episode. And another thing that there is alongside Tad is the interview that we did with Beach House.
Yeah. I believe we mentioned this in the last episode, but Beach House was an example of a band that was so busy, and they had just like a little bit of time in their very overbooked schedule to come in and visit and talk with us. And part of what was making them so busy is that in addition to just this huge tour that they took on for 2016 in support of last year, in 2015, they released not one, but 2 full-length albums. A massive undertaking for any band, but especially a band as beloved as Beach House.
They put out these 2 records, and then they're doing
Depression
this crazy
Cherry,
show.
Thank Your Lucky Stars, both came out last year. This year, 2016, they're touring a bunch. Just that in and of itself, that's a lot, right?
But then add to that these
installation shows. So they decide the band creates this light show. It's in Seattle was one of the tour dates where they had this special light show at these art galleries and art spaces.
They would take these smaller, so they would have their show that they put on, which already has its own level of intensity, and then they were like, let's up our game a little bit with the intensity part of this. Find this small, intimate space in this town while we're on tour and convert these spaces into this, art installation, really. It was... I went to the one here.
You got to go.
I
had to miss it, unfortunately, but you got to go. What was it like?
Well, at first, they are bring a pillow because you're sitting on the floor the whole time, which we learned last episode is not something you're into.
That's not why I missed it, though. I still would have gone. I would have sat on the floor for Beach House.
So, you bring a pillow, so I get to the Fremont Abbey, and it's just this line around the block, and it's all these people standing with their pillows. You just file in, and then there's no light in this room. You're going into this dark room, and you find your space to sit in. It's super disorienting. This screen is there, and they're behind this screen, and you can kind of see them, but it's not the point. And then there's light being projected on the walls and on the ceiling, and there are these cases of these flowers that are made of light, is what it looks like. They're just this incredible visual projection, and you can't really tell what's real and what's not. And you're sitting there and you're listening to Beach House perform, and you're in this installation space, and the light is ever changing in the room, and you don't know who's in front of you or behind you or next to you, and it feels like this kind of sensory deprivation.
Oh man.
And overwhelming at the same time. Almost like a very James Trail light exhibit kind of thing. It was really weird and really cool and made me feel super stoned, but in a good way. It made me feel like the anxiety that I can kind of get in crowds and nervousness didn't exist because
you just weren't aware of it, right? Because you were so immersed in it.
Yeah, and you just sit there, and the next thing you know, an hour or 2. I honestly have no idea how long the show was, and it's over, and everyone picks up their pillow and wanders outside.
When you came to work the next day after you'd first seen that show, the way that you were talking about that experience and the intensity of it and the feelings that it gave you.
So many feelings.
So many feelings. It just really reminded me of the comments I end up seeing on YouTube for the Beach House's videos.
What are you doing in the comment section?
Well, lots of things. But I also happen to manage Sub Pop's YouTube channel.
Which means Alyssa puts videos on the YouTube channel and sometimes has to like organize and make sure things are running. And then I walk by and I see that she's reading the comments.
Sure, I'll read the comments sometimes. Sometimes it's not a good idea, depending on the day.
But with Beach House, oddly different.
Beach House, it's like any given day at any given time, I can just skim through and get basically the same type of response that you just gave.
Like this super emotional, personal response.
Usually people go to YouTube to just say terrible things. And so it's very refreshing and unusual and profound when you see that someone has something good to say at all, let alone deep personal feelings, right? So what we thought would be, help share some of that experience is just give a little sample of the most recent comments that I just did a quick search and found these.
And now we give you a dramatic reenactment
from the Sub Pop staff.
Do you want to read them all?
Yep.
This album helps me with everything. Sadness, angst, stress, everything.
Closed my eyes and listened to this and literally thought I was dying.
Every time I listen to this, my soul seems to get lighter and lighter. Now I'm depressed as fuck, and this kind of makes my heart feel warmer.
Each time the next song plays, I always think, oh yeah, this is the best song on the album. Then the next song plays and I think the same thing again.
Laying on my bed at 3 a.m, listening to this, and I don't know what I'm feeling, but I love it.
I want this album to be played at my funeral. Fucking love this album. Fucking love Beach House.
I had an MRI last week, and I told the technician to put on Beach House while I was inside the machine. I drowned out the constant beeps and whistles and closed my eyes to Victoria's euphoric voice. And when PPP came on, I started to drift off to sleep. So dreamy, so comforting. The present melts away.
Space song is the type of song you want to have slow, deep, and intimate sex to. Heart emoji.
Between the thrills, something inside you that doesn't sleep well.
So now that you understand some of the reaction, we give you a really lighthearted interview with Beach House.
Yeah, right.
This is like the Sub Pop podcast, right?
Yeah.
I just want to
Sub
say
Pop podcast.
Thanks to Sub Pop.
Thank you, Sub Pop, for putting up with us. I won a donut eating contest in Millbridge, Maine when I think I was 12, or maybe 12. I ate 2.5 donuts.
I've always, for some reason, really, really loved Steely Dan. Even though like everything they do is like almost deplorable or something, like it's just so cheesy and over the top, but there's like some sort of like unifying, it's almost like fun or some kind of like really wonderful property of that music.
It's relaxing. It's freeing.
It's like so controlled that it makes you feel like there are no like seams to reality.
There are things in pop music that I really like that have nothing to do with what we do. And I think it's because it's different or the opposite or so ridiculous that it's relaxing. You know what I mean? It's because I think when you work really hard and you're kind of serious about what you do, I don't necessarily like want to listen to other serious people. I've tried to live without regret. I really have. It's really tried to.
We're so like lucky. Like
Yeah.
I can't imagine what I would have told myself.
If I feel like I'm going to regret something, it's almost like this very lightning fast filter that happens in my brain. Like just now, I was like, let's take those pictures because we never know if we'll like ever be back here again, or you know what I mean. So you just have to use your instincts, and we've always been that's been a huge part of our life is instincts and intuition. It's fun and it's risky, and I think risk is very exhilarating. It's an exhilarating way to live life.
Our goal was to elicit a certain type of emotional or metaphysical space where you didn't feel like the typical relationship between performer and audience, and felt kind of more the kind of energies that you feel in a private place when you're like the private creative energy when you're just alone in your house drawing or writing or doing anything. There's a certain feeling, and then as soon as it enters the outside world, it changes so much. It happens with like everything, I think. And we were like, let's try as much as possible to like do everything we can with light and these flowers and our projections and our songs and the transitions and everything. It's just try to create something where we feel as if
the internal world is external energy.
Yeah, that we're avoiding the whole relationship, the whole weird thing that happens. And I think we learned a lot over the course of it, and I think we succeeded in ways and in moments, and in other ways we didn't. But it was a very cool learning experience, and I hope that the audience got a lot out of it. I'm sure some didn't. I'm sure some did. But
I think certain
it was just an awesome experiment, and it made me just excited that if we continue to do music and we continue to do this with our life, that we're always going to try to experiment and keep moving somewhere with things. I don't think we can get factory with this as our career.
Every show is so different. Yeah. There's so many like
the
ups
nuances
and downs for every
really
venue.
enjoyable. Yeah.
They're enjoyable and frustrating, and then
Yeah.
enjoyable and challenging. But it was like it is like any art form. It's a process, and it's a never-ending process. And I think last night's was like the most. I think it was one of the most disorienting ones in terms of like people. I heard people were walking in and that they just like didn't even realize that there was a person standing or sitting next to them, which is far out because it means that it's like a mental landscape without too much intellectual thought, just psychedelic or something.
I think we're also really lucky to have cool fans. Like we've been blessed with like people who, I don't know if blessed is the right word. We've just
You can say blessed.
We've also like maybe just appealed to them or kind of found them through our own like intentions. But like they're really respectful and caring kind of people in general. Like we don't have many like angry, weird jerks coming to our shows. We have like a lot of like kind people who really take care of one another.
So that was Beach House. Thanks again to Victoria and Alex for making time to talk to us about pie eating contests and Steely Dan. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And normally now in the episode you'd hear a mini-mart ad from us, a subpop mini-mart ad.
True.
ad in quotations, right?
Hey.
But how about today, we take a break from that and get a Hardley Art mini-mart ad.
Oh my God, they're going to hate it so much that you are calling it that.
And I'm only going to call it mini-mart ads.
I love it, though.
So let's hear from our cousin, sister, brother label, Hardley Art.
So I'm not sure what we're doing.
Me neither, obviously.
But thanks for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, who are you?
My name is Jason. I am the publicist at Hardley Art Records.
What should people buy from Hardley Art?
All of our records.
How can people do it?
Go to hardleyart.com/shop, and that has all of our band's records. We just added t-shirts. We're going to be adding more.
Do you have any other, like, shot glasses?
Accoutrement?
Socks? Yeah. You know how Subpop has all this stuff.
Yeah, we're not as swagged out, but we do have the world's most comfortable and popular hoodies.
I really do like those hoodies.
Everyone does.
They're really good.
Yeah, we've got hoodies and t-shirts. And like I said, we're adding band shirts. We're in the process of doing that right now.
Jason, what's your favorite thing about John Wick, the movie?
Oh my God, where to begin? My favorite thing about John Wick, the movie, is that it seems like the kind of movie that would go straight to DVD. It's like so generic, right? This guy, his wife dies, his dog gets killed, his car gets stolen. He's like, oh, I'm going to murder them all. And you're like, I've seen that a million times. But for whatever reason, like they
really
elevated
works.
the premise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very well done. Beautifully shot, too.
Directed by the guys who were his stuntmen since Point Break.
Really?
100%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I like that I can get my Keanu News updates from you.
I've got my finger on the pulse of all things Keanu Reeves.
What do you think that you can buy at hardleyart.com? What has the most Keanu Reeves essence? What piece of merchandise?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Let me stew on it for a second. I mean, the obvious answer that comes to mind for me, and I don't know if this is something I should be admitting on a public forum, but I did once Photoshop a picture of him in a chastity belt t-shirt. That's on our Instagram account. Yeah, hopefully we don't get in any trouble for that. But I would say, yeah, get the chastity belt white tee with the steak crotch design, as we call it.
Yeah, I feel like Keanu would wear that, though.
Yeah, he's woke. He's cool. I think he would drive around on his motorcycle, blasting Cool Slut, you know?
Oh, my God. Jason, you're the best. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hardley Art, not as swagged out as Sub Pop.
Oh my goodness.
You said it, Jason.
I love him. How beautiful is Jason's voice?
It's quite nice.
Number one, voice in the office, I think.
Wow.
It's true.
Number one voice.
What?
I'd never heard of that Keanu Reeves movie.
I can't believe that, but it's incredible.
All right,
obviously,
I'll take your word
everyone
for it.
can tell it's don't take my word for it. Watch the movie.
I'd rather take your word for it.
Oh.
You know, Hardley Art's 10th anniversary is coming up next year, and Jason was suggesting some sort of Hardley Art takeover of the podcast.
I would love that.
We'll just have to see about that. Well, now I know you'd love that. Now that he has the number one voice in the office.
So we were talking about the comments that Beach House gets.
Yes.
And in our dramatic reenactment. But there is also some intensity from the comments from TAD fans that you see online, such as, fuck yes, hell yes, back when music rocked, like, yes, more of this.
Yeah.
And it's like capital letters and bold and
lots of exclamation points.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can tell that the grunge fans are happy
Yes.
at just the mention of Tad.
And
if that was your only experience with Tad, like seeing the photos of Tad or the videos of Tad where he's fully lumberjacked out and chainsaw and shotgunning a beer, biting a beer. And like the live show,
image,
right?
yeah.
The live show, even just in videos where you're like, holy fuck. Like you get the all caps and the exclamation points. You totally get that side of him.
Yeah.
And you could, if you had never met him, you could be excused for thinking that he might be like really intimidating / maybe scary, especially when you get those what was the photo where he was reenacting The Shining? Is that a poster?
I think it's a poster.
Yeah, which I love that The Shining comes back into the podcast.
For those who haven't seen that, we'll put that in the show notes as well, but there is a picture of Tad Doyle from Tad with his face going through like a broken door, like Jack in The Shining when he breaks into the bathroom using the axe. It's intense.
Yeah.
Tad's music, the music of Tad is super intense too.
Like I had said when I was first meeting him, I was intimidated and then immediately disarmed because he was so warm and so gracious, right?
Yeah, and that was my experience as well. And I had people had set me up for that a bit. Like that was the expectation when I talked to Dean, who works with him, or my friend Shane, who recorded a record at Tad's studio. Everyone was like, oh, he's so nice, you're gonna have the best time talking to him. But I was intimidated because not only is there this like intense lumberjack thing that I had seen, but he's also Tad. Like he's like a really important part of Sub Pop's history and of music history and of my love for grunge. So I was intimidated for that reason. But then I got to his house and sat down with him, and he was just a peach.
We should just let Tad speak for Tad. Tad talks. Please cut that out. Fuck, God damn it.
I would like to start by talking about Brothers of the Sonic Cloth. I guess because so many people are going to have Tad as their baseline, how would you describe it against that? How is it different?
Musically, it's slower, deeper. Subject matter, lyrically, is complete 180. The lyrics are more life and geological centric. A lot of the themes that the lyrics deal with Brothers is, on a larger scale, like universal, like planets, for lack of it sounds space rock, but it's its own brand of thing. A lot of the subject matter from the last Brothers record was dealing with the impermanence of living and coming to terms with that and trying to figure out how to live purposefully and with no regrets. In the early days with Tad, I had no thoughts about, when it's going to come, death and whatnot. But I've gotten quite a bit older since that time, and you start to think about, what's going to happen, So at first it was like, I thought I was going to live forever, as many teenagers think, and that went well into my 30s and early 40s.
So when did it change?
Well, part of it was coming about from, being clean and not being out of my mind most of the time, and not drinking. So that was kind of like an awareness of physicality and mind, body, and spirit, those elements coming to the forefront. Whereas, I don't know, I used to get ripped to, because I enjoyed it for one, and I just felt like it was the right thing to do at the time, and it provided a bit of inspiration, and it also was an escape, and I don't want to live in an escape anymore. I want to live and experience everything that it has to offer, especially even the pain, of living.
So then, thinking about these reissues that are coming out, which, by the way, people are super excited about. When the podcast started, we put out a call asking who people wanted us to talk to, and yours was the most mentioned name. We said talk to the people in Tad. How do you feel about these coming out again, these records?
I'm really stoked about it. I remember making jokes with Indino, like, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. It was like, God, it sure would be nice if they could reissue those things. I get, an email almost, sometimes 3 a week. Like, why can't I find blah, blah, blah? What's going on with that? Can't we just... And then I have record labels that contacted me too, and they're saying, you got to talk... Like I say, you got to refer them to Sub Pop, you got to talk to them. It'll be a licensing deal, But it's exciting, and I remember joking with Indino. It's like, hopefully I'm not going to have to die before they'll put this crap out again, because that's usually what happens in the music business.
Does it feel like you when you listen to those records now, or does it feel like just a lifetime ago, like a different lifetime, a different person?
Yeah, and especially when Indino was sending mastered versions for me to listen to, and we're going back and forth on that. I hadn't really sat down and listened to it. I don't really listen to my music. At first, you listen to it just to make sure the mix is right when you're doing it, and you'll hear it here and there, or you'll be playing it. I've heard them plenty of times. I know what they're about, but it was great to be able to come back and hear them from a fresh ear, and almost like an outsider, because it was in a different time. I'm not that person anymore. Well, it's 20 plus years or whatever it is, 25, I don't know.
So the members of TAD didn't sit around just listening to TAD records for the last 20 years?
I can't imagine. There was something about it that was... the band had something that was unique and special to it. That's, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but it definitely had elements that weren't being played out during that time. I think it was special stuff, As a group of people, there's a synergy that is rare in music, when you get 3-4 people together and the sum is greater than the single parts. It's a rare thing, We had that, because it still is relevant, I think. Even though the subject matter is very... it's funny to me, and it was funny that people actually took it seriously sometimes. We got banned in Czechoslovakia at a show because of our lyrical content. A long time ago.
Banned?
Well, there was people that were coming and picketing at the show. It was one of the first first shows we ever played over there, and it was with Nirvana, and like they didn't like. I was going, first of all, how the hell do they understand our lyrics, and why would they even care? You know.
So I believe that you took a break from making music for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how long was that break, and what ended it?
Maybe 5 or 6 years. And my other band, Hog Molly, had broken up, and I just didn't see a point in, doing anything at that point, and it just wasn't really floating my boat at that point. So I got into it. That's consequently about the time I started getting clean and sober, and I decided that I needed to focus on something that was going to help me to stay alive and be healthy. And so that's kind of where that started. I was in San Diego. That's where I had moved there to be with Peggy. It's before we got married, and I was driving down the 805, and I turned on the radio, and it was War Pigs by Black Sabbath, and I'm like, holy shit, it brought me to tears. It's like, that's why and then I remembered, that's why I played music. And I felt it, the energy and the emotion. I go, I got to do this again, And so that was kind of the impetus and spark that nudged me in that direction. And then it was, a few years before I even had anything worthy of listening to, because it was like, what is this thing in my hands? I don't understand it anymore. Which is a good thing, honestly, but it was
Why
different.
Why do you say that?
That it was a good thing?
Yeah.
Because you'd be doomed to be playing the same thing over and over if you're used to it, I was able to see it with fresh ears, eyes, and hands, When something's like really just cooking and just, I get emotional, and I've been at shows that have brought me to tears because it's just so amazing to me. It hits me that hard. And having had that happen to me with music, I can't not bring that to the table. I have to. I'm a lot less about playing for other people now. It's a lot for me now, and for my band members. I used to be able to, I'll admit, I like to play in front of people, and I like to have people moved by what I did, but it's not as important to me now as it is for me to be moved by what I'm doing.
My name's Ted, and you're stuck with me.
As an artist, artist, quote unquote, I struggle to keep playing for the right reasons. Here's an example. When I was in my band H Hour, I had set a time limit. If we don't have a record out by this date, I'm done. And I don't think that way anymore. That was like, it's good to have goals and everything. That's fine, but it wasn't because I wanted to have a record out, and it was for the right reasons now. It's like because I want to share this. It wasn't because I wanted to be famous. At one point I thought, delusionally, I thought, well, there's a chance we could become famous,
Right, the difference between the drive to create and the drive to just produce.
Yeah, exactly. There's something about the energy of like playing and having amplifiers and speakers behind you, like moving your pant legs while you're standing in front of it, and the tone and the immense power that's coming out through the electricity, and then having people there with you that are witnessing whatever's happening and playing with other people doing that. It's very powerful. And I think that it was kind of like it was like vitamins to me, I loved it.
You said that a few different times music has moved you to tears, that you really love to experience it and that you really feel it. When you say that, when something moves you to tears, what are you feeling or what are you thinking?
Centered and grateful, you know? At peace. You know, that's where I'm at when that happens. And I'm free, you know. I don't know about anybody else, but like there's a lot going on between my ears most of the time, and it's a lot of noise that doesn't serve me, you know. You know, it's hard to stay centered and in the moment, and music definitely brings me to that. And when a song hits me that very hard in the soul, in the heart, I am completely in the moment with it, and that is very freeing. And because to be honest, I think most people, and I know this from myself, that we're thinking about what happened or what's going to happen. And there's a lot of fear in both the future and sadness in the past for a lot of people. And growing up and being around, living in the times that we live in it's difficult, you know, for most people, I think, myself included, you know. I don't think we're meant to live like this, you know, in tight spaces and all the anger that goes around. So it's challenging, and you never know who's going to be a friend or foe, and you know. For me, when I'm at home, when I'm there, and it's just like feels like home. It's like, oh, that feels good, you know. It's like, wow, I get to experience that. It's a gratitude thing, you know. Wow, that sounds good.
I really liked that interview, Arwen.
Thanks. I really like talking to Tad. I think it's really interesting to think about taking a break from music. I mean, Tad's been in a lot of bands. It's not just Tad, not just Brothers of the Sonic Cloth. Like, there's other bands in there in his history as well.
Mm-hmm.
But to take a break for 5 or 6 years from making music, or really from listening to much music,
mm-hmm.
and then hear a song like War Pigs where you're just like, oh, I have to do this again.
This
like,
is in my blood.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I feel this matters to me.
Yeah.
And to have that like kick you into gear again. And you know, there's this idea that when you're not making, that doesn't mean that you're not productive. Like that there's like, it's like this hibernation, you know, like there's this dormancy
Yeah.
of creativity that you need, and things are like percolating. That's actually something that I was talking to Jessica Hoop about in an interview that I did with her recently, and we're going to be hearing from her later this season more on that idea that there are no breaks, like there are no pauses in creativity.
It's just part of a cycle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That like something is brewing, something is always bubbling up.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. Talking to Tad was intense and wonderful and lovely, and not by any means was this the last time that we would like to talk to him. Like, we know that people want to hear more from him, so we would like to know what you would like to hear from, like what we should talk to Tad about next time, hoping that we get to talk to him again.
Same with Beach House. And I think same with all of the artists that we're getting the opportunity to talk to. We consider all of these an introduction to these, you know, to these artists, or to this, you know, us having these conversations.
Yeah, and
It's
if we're
just the
lucky, we
start.
get to talk to them again.
Yeah.
And so if you guys have a line of questioning or a follow-up question or something, that if we get a chance to talk to someone like Tad or Beach House or
Clipping,
or Kyle Thomas or Mass Gothic or whomever it is that we've talked to previously on the podcast, let us know on Twitter, or you can write to us what is our email address?
podcast@subpop.com.
It's easy enough
That's
to remember.
pretty good.
Yeah. So you can write to us there and let us know, because this is an evolving project, and we would like to talk to all of the people that we've spoken to already at least one more time if we're lucky.
Yeah, and now is the time to do it because you would have our full attention.
Yeah, we are in the planning stages of season 3,
and we really want the feedback.
We do. Not that we're desperate.
No,
or
of course
are we?
not.
Not
or
that
are
like
we?
someone liked something that we put on Twitter and like 22 seconds later I responded to them. Not that that has happened ever.
That is hilarious. And I love that was making us joke about like the Sub Pop podcast promise. We will like something within 10 seconds of you posting it. It just happened to be that you were looking.
It just happened to be that I constantly have that page open. Anyway, enough about our desperation.
Attention. Right, yeah. So, all right. Okay, so what do we have coming up next on the Sub Pop podcast?
Episode 5 is happens in Los Angeles.
It does, doesn't it?
It's from our trip down there after we went to Max FunCon, and then I was in LA for the week after doing interviews, and I talked to a number of people, two of the interviews you'll hear next episode, which is Jonah Ray and CSS. And Jonah is one of the many hosts on the Nerdist podcast, and he's got a Comedy Central show, and he has a CISO show, Hidden America, which I talked to him about.
Yep, and then CSS was the first South American band to be signed to Sub Pop.
They're
it's
also
true facts.
It's true. This is true.
They're known and loved for their danceable electro pop.
They're incredibly interested in astrology.
Yeah, they read you like a book.
Yeah, they really did. And Jonah was incredible to talk to. It was a lovely time.
Yeah.
Mostly. Los Angeles was mostly lovely. But stay tuned for more on that next time on the Sub Pop podcast.
Music you heard on today's episode.
Mudhoney, of course, and Tad, and Beach House, and the Afghan Wigs, along with Thumpers, Strange Wilds, Chastity Belt, Doldrums, Ruby Suns, Low, and Shabazz Palaces.
Yeah, all such good music. The playlist is on
I would hope so.
The playlist is on Sub Pop FM.
You have to check out Stuart's show notes. I mean, it's not an order. It's a request. But I think it's worth it. You'll enjoy it. Stuart's show notes are so good. So thank you again to the big bosses at Sub Pop and the staff of Sub Pop and Hardley Art.
Yeah.
And I think a special thanks to the YouTube commenters.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I was checking the YouTube comments for Beach House. Happened to see a YouTube comment for the Sub Pop podcast.
Oh, yeah.
You want to hear it?
I do.
Someone was very nice, put like streaks with joy. That's nice.
Aww.
Then the other one was TBH. Just came here to dislike. I'm not even listening.
Wow.
Not quite to the level.
Give me this. Well,
of
Bob.
Abusiveness.
Bobby, since you're not even listening, screw you. That sucks. Jesus.
Closed my eyes, listened to this, and literally, I thought I was dying. Say it backwards. Say it again.
No, that was good.
Okay, good.